Greetings, friends. Operational situation for the 15th of May. Active hostilities continue in the Kharkiv region, in the border areas, in the Lipetsk and Volchansk directions. Active hostilities are continuing on Chasirsky, and the enemy is very active now in Krasnogorskrovka. Let's sort everything out in order. We move on to the border areas of the Kharkiv region. The first one is the Lipetsk direction. Activity can be stated to have subsided a little on the part of the enemy, although it remains very high, but still less than it was in previous days. Why? First of all, it is clear that the enemy is now advancing on Volchansk. The main battle is taking place in the neighboring area. But at the same time, in order for the enemy to storm the settlement of Lipsy, larger forces are needed. And in principle we said that the main bet will be made just the same on the Dacha village, in order to the account of the basements go to the cliffs, and not through the open fields. And, as it were, we can state that the main goal of the enemy is to gain a foothold as much as possible in the positions in Glubokoi, and, accordingly, in the Dacha village, towards which attacks are now taking place, in order to pull up larger forces. Therefore, although active hostilities continue, however, I repeat, activity has fallen a little. But it may be temporary. Now we turn to the Volchansk direction. Activity on this segment of the front, on the contrary, increases on the part of the enemy. We have said that the logistical leverage of the enemy is shorter. That is, the Russian command, it throws everything from Shebekin, this new Volshanka, and actually already Godish, Ogurtsovo. Volchansk. The Liptsovsky direction is a little more complicated. There, the concentration of the main forces is Oktyabrski. This is Tavrovo, that is, the logistics shoulder is much longer. But we are moving on to Volchansky, Godish and Staritsa, Bugrovatka, a segment, including Ogurtsov. So, according to the Bugrovatka and the old woman, the enemy managed to advance further. We have already added a red zone. Another intersection has been crossed because footage was published from the AFU, where a fire defeat is inflicted. Well, actually, the enemy has already gained a foothold in a number of houses. But this is already the eastern, western, or rather, part of the Bukrovatka. It adjoins closely to the settlement is being put. Therefore, we add the enemy's advance on a front section to 65 kilometers wide to a depth of up to 1 kilometer, including the neighboring landing. They are separated just the same by the neighboring landing, and the enemy managed to gain a foothold. But at the moment, just before the broadcast, there was a little bit of updated information. Now it seems to be a clarification, but closer to the evening broadcast. I think there will already be more objective information on both the old man and the crib, because there is information that another information, drone footage, strikes are being carried out at another intersection. That is, the enemy continues assault operations, further in the direction of the settlement. It starts from the hillock. That is, approximately in this area. Well, of course, along the way there are attacks in the southern direction, and east to the Chalk Mountain. Moving on. Goth. The main emphasis is already being placed on closing the southern part, although in fact this is, unfortunately, a matter of time for the enemy, because the complex location, as you can see, is unprofitable, or rather, the location of the Gothic itself between the rivers, and, in fact, the supply is extremely difficult. Active hostilities continue, but the enemy is already focusing on Volchansk, where the footage was published. The enemy is already working with tanks. So, let's make changes right away. Let's start from Plitanovka. We added a gray zone yesterday. As you remember, on the evening broadcast, the enemy attacked the eastern, northeastern part. We said that there is a drug. It was just the same attack from Plitanovka. And, unfortunately, the enemy has advanced to the south, and a little southeast of it, well, actually, where the attack was, and continues to try to attack the northeastern part with small assault groups. The main efforts, of course, are on what we talked about yesterday, on landing the attack. Yesterday I also told you on the evening broadcast that I still have no information to confirm or deny. That the enemy occupied the Volchansky meat processing plant, the territory of the Volchansky meat processing plant. Unfortunately, the information was confirmed. The Russian troops managed to occupy this territory. This information is still relevant for yesterday, but we simply did not have visual data at that time. They were not published. Today we already see that just at the Volchansk meat processing plant, Russian troops pulled up tanks just from the Gothic moved. At least 2 tanks were destroyed. And then the enemy continues its assault operations, already in the central part of the settlement of Volchansk. Let's follow the changes. We advanced on the front line 579 kilometers wide to a depth of 341 kilometers. Fixed along the street of Princess Olga. Actually, the tanks operated by the Russian troops approximately in this area. And of course, initially it was assault groups, then tanks and armored vehicles are already being started. Therefore, the situation with us, as I published in my morning summary, is relevant for those points, frames from the drone that were. In other words, these are exactly the same positions where they went south of Princess Olga Street. They were located approximately in this area. And there were also attacks from Tereshkova Street, along Tereshkova Street. We also talked yesterday and added a gray zone, but, unfortunately, the enemy managed to completely gain a foothold in this area. Therefore, it is now increasing pressure in the direction of the central part of Volchansk itself. A lot, of course, remains to be clarified with us. Plus, the situation where earlier from Plitenovka attacked the northeastern part, not only the western part. According to the West, we have more personnel, but in fact a lot of information and misinformation is coming now. As they say, it's better to be a little late, but give the right information. Very heavy fighting continues, very heavy fighting for the city itself. Plus, today our Telegram channels published footage. I'll post it a little later as well. There are both videos and photos. Video of strikes on Volchansk itself. It's simply, in short, burns. In other words, it's already a dozen fabs arriving today. Aerial bombs with a control module. And, accordingly, forest plantations. There are also massive strikes on them, both by artillery and aerial bombs, so it is extremely difficult now in the Volchansk direction. Active fighting continues.